Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Everybody had some coffee, I see. That's a good thing. I'll set this down here. It's an honor and privilege to be here. My name's Yoho, and I represent Florida's 3rd Congressional District. Any Gators here?
Yay!
I expect not many. That's good. But, you know, it was a great game last year in Jacksonville. I was there. Anyways, I do represent the 3rd Congressional District in North Central Florida. And my background is I'm a large animal veterinarian, and it's funny when you get up into Washington around city folks, they just think you're a large animal type of person, and they don't realize large animals are horses and cows and, you know, domestic animals. They think it's, you know, they just don't comprehend that. And, you know, I've worked in ag ever since I was about 14, 15 years of age, and I've practiced for 30 years, had my own business for over 25 years, and I just decided to run for Congress one day, and we did, and we had a great team that got us up there, and I wanted to deal with some of the issues that we deal with in the private sector, being business owners. And when I got up there, it was kind of funny because they says, what's your background? And I says, I'm a veterinarian. They said, no, your political background. I said, well, I've never been elected to an official office. And they're like, well, what do you know? And I said, well, it's amazing what you can learn on the south end of a northbound horse or cow. And they couldn't relate to that, but you guys being ag people, you can understand that, right? And I told them one of the best things to do is you learn to keep your mouth shut, and I'm still working on that because I tend to speak out sometimes. But I sit on the Ag Committee and I sit on Foreign Affairs. And it's interesting because on both of those committees we deal with trade. We deal with agriculture on both committees through our farm programs, the USAID programs. And so they tie together. And you know, a lot of people want to know, why are things so, I don't know if you feel this way, but why are so many things in government, why don't they work? Or why is government overreaching? Or why is, does anybody feel like that? Regulations, stuff like that? And I had a farmer put this in perspective. He goes, you know, the difference between city folks and country folks is, he goes, city people a lot of times will live in a condominium or an apartment or a gated community, and if something breaks, they call the manager and they come out and fix it. But if you're out in the country and something breaks, you fix it. And I says, you know what, that's kind of the way it is, because there's a lot of city folks running our government right now. And it's okay, you know, to put more responsibility back on us. But I got up there, and one of the things we wanted to deal with is regulations and make sure that we have a hand in the policy for the ag community, because we are such a small percentage of the whole population of this country. But yet when you look at what you guys do, it's phenomenal, because we feed not just our communities, our nation, but we all know we feed the majority of the world with our exports. And when we look at our trade, and the amount that goes into food production, food help to other countries, we support over 50% of the food to the rest of those countries that are in need of service. And so I commend you for the hard work you do, and it's always good to get back around, you know, people from the country, because you kind of miss that up there in Washington. And I've got a few notes I want to go over, and we want to talk about, you know, of course, the Farm Bill. I know that's on a lot of people's mind, the way it's affected the peanut program. But more importantly, we want to talk about trade and how we can work to make bigger markets. And so many times, when you get into these programs, you've all heard the thing where people say, well, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. Well, I came across a story the other day, and there was a cowboy named Bud, and Bud was out minding his own self, you know, just thinking about the day. He's overseeing his herd in a remote mountainous area, one of our great western states. And this brand new BMW comes skirting down the road around the corner in this big cloud of smoke, and this young fella stopped. And this driver, he's one, you know, you've seen this kind, he's in a Brioni suit, and he's got Gucci shoes on, those are Italian. He's got some Ray-Ban sunglasses on and a Yves Saint Laurent tie, that's French, I think. And he leaned out of the window and he asked the cowboy, if I tell you, mister, if I tell you exactly how many head of cows and calves you have in your herd, will you give me one of the calves? Bud took his hat off, started scratching his head, and obviously he realized the guy was a yuppie, and he said, yeah, if you could tell me that, as he's looking out over his herd grazing there, he goes, yeah, Sure, why not? I'll try that. So Yuppie parks his car, jumps out of that, pulls out his Dell notebook laptop, connects it to his Android phone, plugs into the internet with a hotspot, surfs at NASA satellite imagery, and looks for his GPS location, takes that location, sends it to another NASA satellite, and it collects this data. And he takes this data with a high resolution photo, and he sends it to another website that takes it to Hamburg, Germany, that processes all this. And after about 2 minutes, things are buzzing. He gets this 150-page report that comes out in full color within seconds. And it goes to his BlackBerry too. And he looks at the farmer, and he goes, "You have exactly 1,586 cows and calves." The old farmer says, "You know what? That's right. Well, I guess you can take one of my calves," Bud says. So the young fella thinks he's pretty smart, so he goes over there and he grabs this one in his suit and he goes over to his car and he pushes it in the trunk. And Bud was just kind of watching this and kind of enjoying this. And he says, "Tell you what, young man, if I could tell you exactly what you do for a living, can I get my calf back?" Well, the young fella says, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll do that," because he's thinking he's pretty smart. And the guy says, "You're an analyst from the USDA." And the young guy goes, "Well, how'd you figure that out?" He goes, "How'd you guess that?" He goes, "There's no guessing required." He says, "You showed up here, even though nobody called you. You wanted to get paid for an answer I already knew to a question I never asked. And you used millions of dollars of taxpayers' equipment trying to show me how much smarter you are than me. And you don't know a thing about working people or making a living, or about cows for that matter, because this is a sheep herd." And can I have my dog back? Anybody feel like that? I'm not going to go into a lot of the stories I've told about rules and regulations and mandates, but we can only tolerate so many. And you know, we are blessed to be in the greatest country in the world. We are blessed to have the ag community being who you are and the work you do, feeding America, feeding the world. And I sit on ag, like I was saying, and you know, with this farm bill, it was very contentious, as you all know. And so many times these bills get passed, and I don't want to sound like somebody in the past that says you got to pass it, see how it's going to work, and things like that. We read the bill, we worked through it, we sat down with focus groups of producers and things like that. But there's unintended consequences, and I think we've all heard the stories, you know, between base acres and non-base acres or generic acres. And you know, the thing that we need to focus on, because some people are put at a disadvantage, some people aren't. That's not the problem that I see. The problem is, where do we sell our peanuts? Where do we go? And this is where trade comes in, and this is where negotiation comes in. You know, if you look at the world overall, there's 7 billion people in the world. America represents 5% of that population, which is about 330 million people. When you look at the ag sector, it's about 1% of that. 1% of America's population is in the ag. And then you look at the peanut sector in the ag, that's a small number, right? That's a small number. We can't have programs that puts one group after another. We as an organization, we as farmers, we as growers need to look at the world and say, how do we get our peanuts out there? Because we produce better than anybody else. If you look at our numbers, there's 29 million metric tons of peanuts produced around the world. The export market's about 1.25 million metric tons. America owns about 16 to 20% of that, depending on seasons. China and India are the number 1 and 2 producers. We're number 3, with 5% of the world's population. We know how to do things better. We can do it, we're just more productive with our techniques and with the work ethics of you, the farmers that are out here. And so what do? I say we come together as a group. And this peanut program, this farm program, we've got a 5-year bill. In order to make it to where everybody benefits out of this, it's going to go through an adjustment period. And as information comes out, you'll probably see minor changes. That's not going to hurt anybody. But the important thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we focus where we really need to focus. and that's to open up these markets. And as you guys are well aware, that the president got TPA approval for fast track for negotiating TPP, which is the trade the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Thank you. And then we have TTIP after that, which is another big trade promotion with the European Union. The TPP is with 12 other countries. We need to make sure, if we go into that we negotiate for what's best for America. And I say, anytime we negotiate, we need to make sure that we do what's best for America, pretty much on all of our policy, whether it's an ag policy, our monetary policies, immigration policy. It's time we put what's best for America in research and development in our trade negotiations. And I think everybody here wants to have fair and balanced trade, right? And I'm sure everybody in here has negotiated a deal, whether it's buying fertilizer or tractor or seed or whatever. And when you negotiate, you want fair trade. But I'm sure you feel like I do. If I get a little bit better deal in the process, I'm okay with that, because that's capitalism, and I hope our negotiators do that too. And it's so important that we do that when we sit down with these countries. And one of the things I wanted to talk about as we move into this trade negotiation, because really what we need to look at is getting more peanuts out into the rest of the world. I sit on the foreign affairs, as I was talking about, and we were talking about the USAID program, which is USA to industrialized nations or development. And I found out 3 weeks ago that our country, the American taxpayers, has given 2.56 million Syrian refugees EBT cards, cash, and cell phones in Syria. And nobody in here, I'm sure, is against helping anybody out in need. But would it be better to send product, like the RUTF of peanuts, to countries instead of cash, that you know people are going to get robbed, that's going to go into the wrong hands, and that money will be used to work against us? And I brought this up in an ag committee, that we need to focus on sending product back to these countries and not the money that can be used against us. Does that sound all right to you guys? I had one of the guys, one of the committee said, we're giving 2.56 million people in a country that doesn't like us all this foreign aid. We don't have to give it to them for them not to like us. They'll like us, not like us for free. And I said, well, I guess that's probably true. But then it goes into our negotiations on trade. We need to be good trading partners. And I had the opportunity to go down to Mexico in November. And I sat with the finance minister from Mexico that negotiated NAFTA. And I shared this story last night, and I want to share it with you, because this is how these trade negotiations work. And the thing that scares me is when you get tied into these multinational trade negotiations, you become secondary to another organization called the UN or the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And we start to lose our sovereignty. And so with the NAFTA story, as we sat there and this guy told us how great NAFTA was, it brought people out of poverty, it took the poor farmer off the farm and his grandson doesn't have to farm, and it was a great deal for Mexico. Well, last year was the first year our sugar program had to paid out $250 million of the American taxpayers. So I shared this with this fellow, and I says, you know, sir, when we trade, we need to make sure we take care of each other if we're allies. But the NAFTA last year cost my American taxpayers $250 million. He got a little bit hot. And we're in a room, about 30 dignitaries in there, and then there was me. And we're sitting there, and he started just kind of scolding me in front of everybody. And my head got about as red as Virginia's shirt back there. And I was getting a little aggravated because he's telling me how we shouldn't be so insensitive. We should look at the people in his country and how they brought them out of poverty. And I calmed down and I said, sir, let me tell you something about NAFTA in my country. Because of your policies, it cost my American taxpayers $250 million because you, the Mexican government, is producing 40% of the sugar, dumping it on our market with no restrictions. In addition, you're buying from Brazil, dumping that sugar on my market, costing my American taxpayers money. And for that poor farmer in Mexico and his grandson doesn't have to farm anymore, I'm okay with that. But let me tell you, in Homestead, Florida, where the economic impact because of NAFTA on the tomato markets is it's a $298 million economic hit to that area yearly. For the young farmer that wants to take over grandpa's business in Homestead, Florida and raise tomatoes, he can't because of NAFTA, and I've got a problem with that. And the neat thing was, he calmed down and he leans in and he tells us all, you know what, we're sorry about that. We did do that. And it was amazing to get another person to admit that. And I tell you that story only because as we enter in these negotiations, I want somebody out there that can negotiate. I want somebody that knows what a calf is, or a sheep, or a dog is. Not somebody that thinks they did a good job on a negotiation that doesn't benefit America and American farmers. And if we do that, and we negotiate with getting peanuts out there and showing them the benefit of that, we can make this market strong. But we can't do it at the expense of somebody else in another market, because if we hurt another area of the peanut production area, it's not going to make us, you know, you might be temporarily strong, but it's going to suppress the price for the rest of us, and it's going to hurt this market, and then somebody else will fill that void in the world. It might be Argentina, might be China, might be India. We need to come together as Americans, as American farmers, because nobody else in the world can do it as good as we do. And we need to come out strong, and let's make this market the strongest we can. And with that, I want to just leave you with Galatians 6:90. Don't grow weary in well-doing, for he that follows his law shall reap the harvest. And I know if we stay loyal to the word of our Creator, and we come together as Americans, we're going to do just fine. Thank you.